Chapter 2. World War II. At home, school and in the community. A lot of homes had an Anderson shelter in the back garden into which to retreat during air raids. Sometimes they were above ground, sometimes they were partially below ground. Sometimes they were communal shelters, near schools or on street corners. Alf's nearest air raid shelters were on a small piece of waste ground at the corner of Victoria Road and Presswood Road West, just called Presswood Road in those days. The shelters became play areas for children after the war, and the ground now has bungalows erected on it. Marjorie was in a precarious situation during air raids because of her attachment to her mom. Mom had been completely deaf since the age of 22 and could neither hear the aircraft overhead nor any falling bombs. Additionally, she was claustrophobic. All of this often meant that she would leave the family's Anderson shelter before the all clear had sounded. Faithful Marjorie would follow her and so spent the rest of the air raid period hiding under the bedclothes, whilst Dad and her two sisters remained in the shelter. Food was rationed during the war, starting with bacon, butter and sugar in 1940. Rationing ensured a fairer distribution of food and commodities when supplies were scarce. By 1942, many other foodstuffs, including meat, milk, cheese, eggs and cooking fat, were also on the ration. A typical week's ration for an adult consisted of 4 ounces of bacon and ham or other meat to the value of 1 shilling and 2pence, about 2 chops, 2 ounces of butter, 2 ounces of cheese, 4 ounces of margarine, 4 ounces of cooking fat, 3 pints of milk, 8 ounces of sugar, 1 pound of preserves per 2 months, 2 ounces of tea, 1 fresh egg plus an allowance of dried egg, and 12 ounces of sweets per 4 weeks. Everyone in the country had a ration book, which would be registered at a shop of their choosing. The existing habit of growing your own produce at home really came into its own. The humble potato got big billing by the Ministry of Food. Homegrown potatoes were even praised for saving on shipping costs. Much was imported even then. Pig clubs were popular. People banded together to buy a pig and provide vegetable peelings, etc. to feed it, just as they had done for years anyway. They could then share the meat to augment the meagre meat ration allowed. Pig clubs were also allowed to have a small ration of pig feed or corn. Alf's family went halves in a pig with a lady in Blackhalve Lane. She had the pigsty, so she took care of the pig. Queuing at shops could not be avoided, and if you were around age 10 or older, you would probably find that task delegated to you. Coal was rationed. The ration was set at 2.5 tons per household per year. It is difficult for anyone who was not alive at the time to understand how significant this was. Almost all domestic heating was from coal fires. Hot water came from coal-fired boilers, and many people were still cooking on coal-fired kitchen ranges. Industry, too, was powered by coal. In schools, gas mask drill was practised every morning for 5 or 10 minutes. Pupils took their masks to school each day, often in a cardboard box hung around the neck with a piece of string. If you forgot it, you were sent home to fetch it. Teachers at Woden Avenue Infant and Junior School, now Wednesfield Primary School, would walk the pupils over to their allotted air raid shelter on Lewis's Field, situated to the side of the Royal British Legion driveway off Vicarage Road. Until recently, this field was the site of a care home, which has now been demolished and awaits residential development. The air raid shelters for the school in Nechel's Lane were in the Regal Fields, more or less where the police station now stands. The concrete from which they were made always smelled damp. This smell and the smell of the rubber of the gas masks have both proved difficult to forget. As elsewhere, Wednesfield Industry was involved in war-related production, but after the war had ended, Wolverhampton Metal Company in Well Lane, Wednesfield, bought a lot of war-related non-ferrous metal items for reprocessing. Included in this was scrap from HMS Warspite, which had played a significant role in the Battle of the River Plate. John M. recalls the huge boiler being transported down Well Lane to the factory. On the 23rd of February 1946, the Wednesfield Prisoners of War Families Club held a welcome home victory dinner for Wednesfield's repatriated POWs. The directors of Brockhouse Castings loaned their canteen for the occasion.